I bring you news once again from international scenes. On the headlines, Chinese army sent away U.S. ship from South China Sea. Referendum question on indigenous recognition launched by Albanese. Beijing's involvement in Honduras diplomatic crunch glaring, Taiwan says. Over Putin warrant ICC troubled by Russia's threat. And Antony Blinken disregards Xi-Putin relations as marriage of inconvenience. South China Sea, a United States warship that had unlawfully entered waters it claims in the South China Sea, was tracked and sent away by China's military. The U.S. Navy dismissed China's claims, asserting that the ship was on a routine operation and left the area of its own accord. On Thursday, in a statement, the Southern Theater Command of the Chinese People's Liberation Army, PLA, said the USS Milios, a guided missile destroyer, encroached into waters around the contested Paracel Islands. Spokesperson for the Southern Theater Command, Tian Junli, said the PLA organized sea and air forces to track and monitor the ship in accordance with the law and warned it to leave. The U.S. vessel made an illegal invasion into Chinese territorial waters without consent from the Chinese government, harming peace and stability in the region, he said. On Thursday, the U.S. Navy disputed the PLA statement, saying the destroyer was conducting routine operations in the South China Sea and was not expelled by Chinese ships. A statement from the U.S. Navy 7th Fleet said the United States will continue to fly, sail and operate wherever international law allows. A tweet from the 7th Fleet did not mention the USS Milios encounter with Chinese naval officers. Tension has been rising between the U.S. and China in recent months as Beijing adopts a most hostile stance towards Taiwan and as Washington covers agreements for military ties with Asian states which are party to territorial clashes in the South China Sea. China claims sovereignty over almost the whole South China Sea, a planned waterway through which trade worth trillions of dollars happens yearly in spite of an international court ruling that the claim has no legal basis. The Philippines, Vietnam, Malaysia and Brunei have overlapping claims in the sea, and they have accused Chinese vessels of harassing their fishing boats in the area. Anthony Albanese, Australian Prime Minister, has elaborately outlined a proposed referendum to be held later this year targeted at giving recognition in the Constitution to the nation's indigenous people. The Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people, constituting about 3.8% of Australia's population, are presently not mentioned in the Constitution. For 122 years, Australia's founding document has failed to recognize indigenous communities and their over 65,000 years of continuous connection to the land. The referendum to be held between October and December will seek to enshrine in the Constitution recognition of indigenous people through the establishment of a consultative committee to Parliament called the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander Voice. On Thursday, an emotional Albanese said such a body endorsing indigenous opinions to the government and Parliament was required to overcome systematic disadvantage experienced by generations of indigenous people. The question asked of voters in the referendum will be a proposed law to alter the Constitution to recognize the First Peoples of Australia by establishing an Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander voice. If the referendum pulls through, the Constitution will state that the voice may make representations to the Parliament and government on matters relating to Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples. Australia's constitution came into effect in 1901 and has never acknowledged the indigenous people as the country's original inhabitants. Now on politics, Taiwan's Foreign Minister Joseph Wu has accused China of contributing in the plan by Honduras to shift diplomatic allegiance from Taipei to Beijing, while also suggesting that the Central American country had demanded a high price to maintain ties with Taiwan. The comments by Taiwan's foreign minister came a day after Honduras refutes it had asked for $2.5 billion in support from Taiwan before declaring a plan to open relations with China. Beijing views self-rule Taiwan as its own territory and has been ramping up efforts to win over just 14 countries that continue to maintain official diplomatic ties with the island. Speaking at Parliament, Wu said the situation with Honduras was not very good. The marks of Chinese involvement are very obvious, he said. But the island will not engage in dollar diplomacy with China, Wu added. We've entered a very difficult phase, he said, but we'll work hard until the last minute. who said when asked about Honduras' suspected $2.5 billion US aid demand, the other side demanded a high price, but he did not directly confirm the assertion, reported. Citing a source conversant with the situation on Wednesday that Honduras had demanded the funds in aid from Taiwan the day before, Honduran President Xiomara Castro tweeted that her government will seek to open relations with China. China's foreign ministry did not respond to a request for comment concerning the island's accusation of its involvement in Honduras' imminent break in diplomatic ties. The International Criminal Court (ICC) has stated fears over threats from Russia following its issuing of a war crimes arrest warrant for President Vladimir Putin. On Wednesday, the ICC statement of concern came after ex-Russian President Dmitry Medvedev threatened to hit the war crimes court in The Hague with hypersonic missiles. It also follows Russia's top probing body opening a criminal case against ICC prosecutor Karim Khan, as well as the judges who issued the warrant for Putin. The presidency of the ICC's Assembly of State Parties said it regrets these efforts to deter international attempts to guarantee accountability for acts that are banned under general international law. The Assembly also reaffirms its unwavering support for the International Criminal Court, the presidency said. Medvedev said on Monday it's quite possible to imagine a hypersonic missile being launched from the North Sea from a Russian ship at the Hague courthouse. The ICC arrest warrant for Putin issued on Friday accused the Russian president of illegally deporting thousands of Ukrainian children, a war crime. The legal move will obligate the court's 123 member states to apprehend Putin and transfer him to The Hague for trial if he sets foot on their territory. Neither Russia nor Ukraine is a member of the ICC, though Kyiv has approved the court jurisdiction to prosecute crimes committed on its territory. The tribunal also has no police force of its own and depends on member states to make arrests. The ICC also issued a warrant against Maria Belova, Russia's presidential commissioner for children's rights, on similar charges. Moscow discharged the orders as null and void, and Russia's top investigative committee said there was no basis for criminal liability on Putin's part. It also said that heads of state enjoy complete immunity under a 1973 United Nations Convention. Still talking Russia-Ukraine war, United States Secretary of State Antony Blinken has disregarded strengthening relations between China and Russia as a marriage of convenience. On Wednesday, Blinken made the statement after Xi Jinping, Chinese president, and his Russian counterpart Vladimir Putin were videos saying warm goodbyes at the end of 2 days of closely watched meetings in Moscow. In part as a result of having this very different worldview than we do, they have a marriage of convenience, Blinken told the U.S. Senate Foreign Relations Committee. I am not sure of its conviction. The secretary said Russia is very much the junior partner in the relationship and noted that China had so far refused to give weapons to Moscow for its war in Ukraine. Blinken said although China hoped to change the U.S.-led international order with its own illiberal vision, Russia did not appear to have a coherent ideology apart from world disorder. The talks were the newest example of improving relations between Beijing and Moscow, who share a mutual suspicion of the West since the announcement of a no-limits partnership in February last year. While in Moscow, Xi repeated a 12-point peace plan to end the war in Ukraine, which Putin welcomed, saying it correlates to the points of view of the Kremlin. The U.S. has reacted to the plan with skepticism, cautioning the proposals will let Moscow to territorial gains in the country. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has said he remains open to China's proposals, but impact will rely on the full withdrawal of Russian troops from occupied Ukrainian territory. There are more stories. Rebuilding war-torn Ukraine will cost $411 billion US, says World Bank. A World Bank report has approximated it will cost Ukraine $411 billion US over the next 10 years to recover and reconstruct from Russia's war on the country, with the bill for cleaning up the ruins from devastated towns and cities standing $5 billion US alone. The report released on Wednesday said that estimates should be measured as minimums, as needs will continue to rise as long as the war continues. Formed cooperatively by Ukraine's government, the World Bank, the European Commission and the United States, the $411 billion US assessment marked an addition from the $349 billion US approximated in a report released by the bank in September. The report explains some of the economic and human toll of Russia's war, including closely 2 million homes destroyed, over 1 in 5 public health institutions damaged, 650 ambulances destroyed or stolen, and at least 9,655 civilians confirmed dead, including 461 children. Ukraine's reconstruction will take several years, the World Bank's Vice President for Europe and Central Asia, Anna Jardy, said on Wednesday. The report calculates $135 billion in direct damage to buildings and infrastructure so far, not counting the broader economic fallouts from the long conflict. But the damage could have been even worse if not for the defense mounted by Ukrainian forces, which had kept the worst of the destruction confined to the frontline regions of Donetsk, Kharkiv, Luhansk, and Kherson, Jardy said in a call with reporters. The assessment expects Kyiv to need $14 billion for critical and priority reconstruction, as well as recovery in investments in 2023 alone. On Tuesday, the International Monetary Fund (IMF) said it reached a staff-level agreement with Ukraine for a 4-year financing package worth about $15.6 billion. Notwithstanding Russia's brutal attack, Ukraine continues to maintain vital public services, including keeping schools and hospitals open, paying the salaries of teachers and civil servants, as well as paying pensions, the World Bank said in February. Haitian mayor arrested for visa fraud, accused of persecution. An ex-Haitian mayor has been detained in the United States on 3 charges of visa fraud, a day after a court ordered him to pay $15.5 million for his suspected role in the violent persecution of his political rivals. Jean Moroso Villena, 50, is anticipated to appear before a federal court in Boston, Massachusetts, shortly after being arrested on immigration-related charges on Wednesday. He faces up to 10 years in prison and a fine of $250,000. The U.S. Attorney's Office, in a statement, criticized the horrific violence the former mayor had committed in his home country of Haiti as leader of the commune of Les Irois, which is located on the island's southwestern peninsula. Our nation offers protection, assistance, and asylum to those who are persecuted, U.S. Attorney Rachel Corolin said in the press release. People that perpetrate acts of violence and harm in their countries and then allegedly lie about their conduct to U.S. immigration officials are not welcome here. Prosecutors accused Villena of lying to secure a visa into the U.S. by concealing his violent past. His visa application needed that he confirmed he had not ordered, carried out, or materially assisted in extrajudicial and political killings in Haiti. Villena allegedly checked the box saying he had not, and later swore before a consular office that his statements on the application were accurate, something prosecutors deny. Throughout his tenure as mayor from about 2006 to 2010, prosecutors say Villena personally supervised armed groups and Korega militia members to impose his strategies and suppress any opposition. Wednesday's statement from prosecutors outlines 2 occurrences, the first around July 2007, when a witness spoke out in court about an assault perpetrated against his neighbor and credited to Villena. In Africa, protests in Bangui in solidarity with China and Russia. In Central African Republic, closely 200 people walk in Bangui, the capital of the state, in support of China and Russia 4 days after 9 Chinese were killed at a mining site in the center of the country. The march began at dawn and ended midday at the foot of a monument which pays homage to the country's armed forces and its Russian allies. The demonstrators held up Russia flags and banners proclaiming support China and Russia is Wagner, we love Russia and we love Wagner, and laid a wreath of flowers in front of the Chinese embassy. Benvo Toka, deputy spokesman of the Republic Front in Central Africa, stated that since the Republic is not a vague land where barbaric acts must be perpetrated, we pray to the head of state, father of the nation, and supreme head of armies to take its constitutional responsibility to defend Central Africans and foreign partners in the service of the win-win partnership in Central Africa. 9 Chinese nationals were killed in a raid on a mining site in central China on Sunday. A commission of inquiry has been set up, and Chinese President Xi Jinping has called for severe punishment for those responsible. 2 people were seriously wounded, China added. The CAR, one of the world's poorest countries, has been in the travail of civil conflict since 2013. Militias have swayed over large swaths of the country and often clash over access to minerals and other resources. Bambari's Deputy Prefect Santorini's Nakaisingra Pandey said, according to reports, that government forces and Russians have been here since yesterday. They have gone off to hunt for the rebels whose identity has yet to be confirmed. Let's take a quick break, and when we come back, I'll be stories from Nigeria. Stay with us. You're welcome back with stories from Nigeria. Guba poll celebrations in Abia as Oti wins emerges in Enugu. Yesterday, after 4 days of political deadlock and unease, the Independent National Electoral Commission, INEC, at precisely 5:24 p.m. declared Dr. Alex Oti, the Labour Party LP candidate, as the winner of the March 18th governorship election in Abia State and threw the state into wild excitement. He polled 175,467 votes to defeat his closest rival, Chief O.K. Ohiwe of the ruling People's Democratic Party, who scored 88,529 votes. Chief Eyinaya Nwafo of the Young Progressives Party, YPP, came third with 28,972 votes. Vice-Chancellor of the Federal University of Technology, Owerri Futo, and returning officer, Professor Nnenna Oti, subsequently declared Oti the governor-elect, having garnered the highest number of votes and satisfied all necessary conditions. In Enugu, Mr. Peter Mba of the PDP won the very tight battle against Chief Chijioke Edioga of the Labour Party. Mba got 160,895 votes, while Edioga got 157,552 votes. Mr. Frank Weke of the ABGA polled 17,983 votes to come third, while Uche Naji of the APC, who was fourth with 14,575 votes. Mba was declared governor-elect at accurately 10:46 p.m. The Central Bank of Nigeria instructs banks to come for all notes as NLC threatens strike. Nigeria Labour Congress (NLC) has asked public sector workers to embark on a nationwide strike starting from next Wednesday. Yesterday, its president Joe Ajaero gave the directive during a media briefing in Abuja. He also directed the affiliates to get set for the picketing of Central Bank of Nigeria (CBN) branches across the federation. Ajaero said the order was consequent upon the expiration of 1 week ultimatum given to the Apex Bank to make cash available for Nigerians. However, reliable sources at the CBN said last night banks had been instructed to collect the old Naira notes they deposited in the Central Bank of Nigeria, assuring that before the end of the week, the country will be awash with the currency. They said there will be no need for any action by Labour. NLC had urged the federal government to address the hardship faced by Nigerians due to challenges posed by currency, fuel scarcity, and electricity tariff hike. In a communique, the Central Labour Body said the three were among the most challenging issues and Central Working Committee (CWC) raised grave concern over. The communique particularly charged government to take abrupt action to bolster the alarming economic and social hardship facing Nigerians. It reads, CWC said poor implementation of the Naira redesign policy has caused considerable pain and hardship to the people. And finally, on the news, Army lauded for thwarting attack in Borno. Major General Waidi Shuaibu, the General Officer commanding GOC 7 Division and Commander of Sector 1, Operation Hadinkai, has appreciated the soldiers of 112 Task Force Battalion MAFA for their efforts in hindering a midnight raid by the Islamic State of West Africa province terrorists on the town in the early hours of Sunday, March 19th, 2023. Shuaibu, who gave the commendation during an operational visit to the forces on March 21st, 2023, hailed their tenacity and fierce fighting spirit during the encounter. The GOC defined their persistence as one of the hallmarks of soldiering and applauded the concerted efforts of the troops in not only defending Mafa town, but for also successfully neutralizing scores of the attackers in collaboration with fighter aircraft air components Operation Hadinkai, causing the hasty retreat of surviving terrorists. The GOC also used the operational visit to charge the troops to remain resilient and be allowed to deal decisively with the remnants of Boko Haram and ISWAP terrorists within the area of operations. He therefore thereafter extended the commendation of the Chief of Army Staff, COAC Lieutenant General Farouk Yahaya, to the troops for their conduct in the foiling of the attack. Besides that, he further stressed that the COAC's directives for troops to go after the remnants of terrorists not leaving out their hideouts and enclaves, admonishing the troops to remain courageous, disciplined, vigilant, and professional, urging them to shun all acts hostile to actualization of operational objectives. A recap of major stories says Chinese Army sent away U.S. ship from South China Sea. Referendum question on indigenous recognition launched by Albanese. Beijing's involvement in Honduras diplomatic crunch glaring, Taiwan says. Over Putin warrant, ICC troubled by Russia's threats, and Antony Blinken disregards Xi-Putin relations as marriage of convenience. Thanks for watching. I am Lois Reki.